All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Local Government Insights Podcast, Modernizing Government Leadership, your source and insight for local government technology. My name is Brennan Middleton, and today we're going to be speaking with Bob Leyde, City Clerk from the City of Florence, Alabama, on his operational approach to streamlining tax administration and maximizing compliance of the business community that led to over $3 million in tax revenue growth. Welcome to the show, Bob. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Brennan. It's good to be here with you.
Awesome. So for those listening, Bob has served as the city clerk since 2004. And prior to that, he was the license inspector for the office for over 7 years. In college, he majored in both business administration and accounting and moved to the city in 1979. Family and baseball are staples in Bob's life, and he's known by many in Florence as the people's clerk for his service to all citizens. Bob is an active community and a member of the Knights of Columbus and serves on the board of the Credit Union and United Way. So, Bob, before we jump right into one of my first questions I have for you today, would you mind just telling us a little bit more about the City of Florence itself and kind of set the stage for our discussion?
Okay, sure. City of Florence is located in northwest Alabama. We are the northwesternest most county in the state, probably 10 miles south of the Tennessee border, about 25 miles east of the Mississippi border. We have a population around 40,000, give or take. We have the University of North Alabama is located here. And I guess one of the things I did want to say is that while we have a population of 40,000 in the state of Alabama, that puts us, we're about the 11th largest city in the state of Alabama. I know in a lot of other states, that would not be a very big state or very big city at all. But in Alabama, it is just because we have so many small towns and cities. So I think a lot of what I'm going to have to say today or will say today, I think is going to be very beneficial to cities and towns across the nation, no matter what size they are. So
excellent. So Bob, as we dive right in here and around the topic of streamlining tax administration and overall compliance levels, I'd like to start by just talking through some of the challenges you were facing that led to some of the improvements in operations and also some of the adjustments you made to maximizing compliance of administration of business license and sales tax revenue for the city. Could you start by giving us some insight into the makeup of the business community as a whole and what led to your decision to evaluate the current collection processes?
Well, we've got, I'm going to say approximately probably now anyway, probably 4,500 business licenses that we issue. We don't have a lot of large manufacturing facilities, so it's a lot of small mom and pop stores. We do have several malls and that, so we do have some of the big box stores. But we basically, one of the things I think that when I first came with the city, I'd been here probably 3 or 4 years, and at that time, our sales tax collections were done through the state of Alabama. And quite honestly, one of the things with that is we would get, basically we were getting 2 distributions a month. And at that, the distributions were like 2 weeks after the fact. So for any given month, for example, end of June, it would be middle of July before we were getting a final tax number for the month of June. And that can happen in 2 weeks. And the other part of that is, of course, as you well know, sales taxes are due on the 20th. So the first 2 week period, you're not going to have much in there anyway. So you really didn't have anything to go by until 2 weeks after the end of the month. And then all of a sudden, okay, here's your sales tax figures. So one of the things that's happened is when we started looking at it and actually went with a private company, and then they've been later bought out several times, but now Avenu has. And basically what we were looking at is something that where we're having money deposited a lot more often into our account that we could readily use. And so now we get probably, I'm going to guesstimate, we get 12 distributions a month, something like that.
Wow.
We get Uh, Several we'll get 2, 3, 4 in the first half of the month, and then basically, really starting from the 20th on, we're getting a distribution every month. And so, like for the month of June, I got all our reports, documents yesterday afternoon, and I've already turned those over to accounting to go ahead and let them book and record. And so, we know right where we are, and it's just knowing that you've got your money and the money's already been in the bank and been in there all along is really been a big help for us.
That's excellent. And I'd like to touch on that a little bit further. Can you talk about how important that is to have those distributions so quickly and how that impacts not only decision making processes that you have to deal with on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter, but how that allows you to effectively communicate trends that you're seeing? Obviously, if you're getting distributions more rapidly, more often, more frequent, it's got to impact your decision making process because you have insight into the data, but also having that insight and that enables decision making is obviously got to impact your communication around some trends that you're seeing and be able to make decisions that impact either downward trends or upward trends in certain areas. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. One of the things with that, like I say, getting those distributions, and like I say, we're starting to get them. I mean, we get them even the 5th, 6th of the month. We're starting to get, so even if it's $10,000, that's still $10,000 more that's in the account. And like I say, our sales tax revenue is over 50% of the revenues for the general fund. And so, sales tax deeply impacts on what we do, what we can do and what we can't do in the city. So getting these numbers, we can get them in there, and like I say, then starting with the 20th, we're getting numbers every day, and so we can kind of see, okay, hey, it looks like it's going to be a pretty good month, and keep going forward, and like I say, so we keep putting that money in the bank and spend it how we need to. But we can also, one of the things I do is also, there's some reports that Avenu generates, where we can compare, and a lot of times what they're doing is comparing to the same month from a year ago. And so we're taking a look at those. I do all the time during the month to see, okay, how are we doing? As of the 20th or as of the 25th a year ago compared to the 25th here, how are we doing? And it's one thing if you're up $5,000-$10,000, oh no, no big deal kind of a thing. But then when you get some months, okay, now you're up $500,000 over that same period. Okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
Is it a specific store, industry, something like that's really going gangbusters, or just what? And for example, this month we had a big increase over the same period a year ago. And you're starting to look at this stuff. Okay, why? Of course, realizing last year we were in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of stores were actually physically shut down here in Florence.
Sure.
But we still were doing pretty good even last year for the most part over the previous year. But a lot of that too is we had, surprising enough, with the pandemic, people were going out. They were still going, for example, to the Walmart's our biggest taxpayer. So they were going to Walmart and Sam's. They were still eating good. People were going out getting food, a lot of stuff, and probably toilet paper, I guess, in there is what they're doing. But also we had, like I say, between Walmart and Sam's, but then we also had like Lowe's and Home Depot were showing up and consistently from a year ago all the way through today, where they were up a good bit over the previous year. And basically, I think what we figured out is a lot of times, people were out of jobs, out of work, and they were home, and so this was a good chance for them to get honeydew jobs done. And
That's right.
so that's what we were finding out. People were going, they were, building the deck that they've always wanted to. They had the time on their hands that they could go and do that, or remodel a room in their house, or do some painting and stuff like that. So that's one of the things with these reports and the timeliness of it it gives us, just a really good inclination of, how are we doing here? And like I say, I was as surprised as anybody that we were up as much as we were over last year. But again, it's good to see that, and hopefully more and more people going back to work now too will keep that going. And so it allows us to, again, to provide services for our constituents, whether they're working or not. We still provide the services to them. And so there's
Absolutely.
been no cutbacks whatsoever as far as service goes to our
Excellent.
citizens.
And before we jump over and talk a little bit about the business community itself and ensuring kind of compliance levels are where they need to be, given the fact that your sales tax revenue is nearly 50% of the annual budget, there's got to be clearly a large focus on the overall collection process itself. The accuracy of reporting is what you've already alluded to today, and kind of the overall compliance of that revenue stream, since it does make up such a large percentage of your budget. I'd like to spend just a minute and talk about your team. What's the makeup of your team? And then what does that approach and what does that process look like in outsourcing that administration and collection function to a provider like Avenu that it enables your staff to either focus on other tasks that you need them to do, but also just the increased in efficiency of the collection? And what does that process look like? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We basically have, I guess you would say, two people that are primarily responsible for dealing with business licenses. Now they have other things to do other than just strictly business licenses, but so one of the things that this has helped us do is like I say, have us maybe have our people deal with the problem things or questions or new businesses coming in. Hey, how about this? What do I do to or how do I go about this? Because one of the things before, and I'll be quite honest with it, that we had a question on, are people really paying the right amount or are they not? And so this is where, and this may be too early to get into business license discovery recovery. I don't know if you want to wait on that. But one of the things, too, we were looking at, again, are people paying the right amount? Are we getting, is everybody that's doing business in Florence, are they actually, getting a business license to begin with? And if so, are they charging sales tax, and are we getting that sales tax? But so I'm sorry, and I've jumped around kind
No,
of the
no, no.
business license part of it there, but it kind of goes hand in hand. The more business license we get, then we figure, okay, there's going to be sales tax revenue and stuff generated from there. And a lot of times, a lot of this stuff we just didn't know that people were doing business in Florence. People that come in and make deliveries during the middle of the night, or just things like that, providing services. Unless you actually saw maybe the truck or the van going down the road with the name of the business, if you were out that late, to see it, you had no idea if who was actually doing business in there. And that's where, like I say, that's where Avenu has come in and helped us out a lot from that standpoint.
That's excellent. And that's kind of where I want to go next, Bob, is the overall compliance levels in the business community itself. And when we spoke last, you mentioned how early on you began to evaluate some of the trends you were seeing across the business community itself, not specific to sales tax collection, but really the community and the makeup of the community and the businesses that were coming in and out, and how the overall issuance of licensing had shifted a bit. Can we shift a little bit and talk about, can you walk us through your approach to implementing a process really that would evaluate the accuracy of that collection, number one, discover any of those businesses that were unlicensed, and then once the discovery happens, how do you process and administer those licenses that ultimately, in your case, in many cases across the country, that clients that we deal with ultimately find immense revenue growth out of that. And then the recurring nature of that, once they're identified and they're on the business rolls, what's the impact of that moving into the future now that you have a complete level of compliance, or at least a close to complete level of compliance? What is the impact on your budget moving forward? And really, just if you wouldn't mind outlining that overall process that Avenu takes.
Okay. The and I guess this, of course, this is leading us into the discovery recovery program
Sure.
that Avenu has, and we got on board with that early on, and I think we've been on it since something I was looking at was April of 2009, I think, is when we started that. But like I say, one of the things that we just really had a question on, are we getting business licenses from everybody that is actually doing business here? And I mean, I think we all in the office pretty much figured out no, we probably weren't. And so basically we had signed up for the business license discovery recovery program, and basically what happens is, Avenu has just access to a number of different databases throughout the state, and so and they've got different people reporting things, and so they can see, hey, XYZ companies doing business in these cities, more likely they're doing business in yours. And so anyway, they go through their process, and like I say, the uh, first year, if I remember right, I think they generated, I think it was $120,000 in additional business license revenue, for the city of Florence. And then, of course, once they determine who the companies are and all that stuff, they actually give that information to us, and so then we put them in our system. So then it automatically generates the following year. It generates a renewal business license renewal application for them, and so those people are on our books now, and so we collect from them. And so, like you say, if you get 120,000 um, from that first year, you're actually getting that same 120,000
Right.
every year, after that, plus any new businesses that come in that are discovered through the recovery process there. And so it amounts to a good bit of money. I think we figured out, we probably generated like $3 million, increase, over this time, 10, 12 year time frame. And so it's been a no-brainer for us. Had nothing to lose by signing up for it. And uh, like I say, the fee for it, if they don't collect, you guys don't collect anything, we don't pay anything. So uh, it's a win-win for you guys, for Avenu and for the city of Florence. So it's been a very good program. I strongly suggest anybody that if they do have Avenu do sales tax for them, to go ahead and sign up for the Discovery Recovery program, because it's a win-win.
Excellent. And I'm going to coin a term from our last conversation, the budget neutral approach. I think that's important to highlight. The ability to discover and recover businesses from your perspective is really budget neutral to you. There's no upfront fee. There's no upfront payment for Avenu to provide that solution to you. It's really based on the number and the collection of those new businesses that are adding ultimately to your overall general fund, which is important to highlight there. So thank you for doing that. There's got to be, so having that compliance level, it's got to shift and alleviate some of the need to raise taxes in other areas. Could you talk about that a little bit, and if you've been under any strain or consideration of possible tax increases in other areas based on declining levels in the business compliance community, and how that has alleviated that pain point?
Yeah, we there were, like I say, with sales tax revenue being such a big percentage of our general fund revenue, we always had to take a look at that real close. And like I say, when you start getting, now where we generated an additional, $3 million through there, it certainly held off. We had our last sales tax revenue increase was in 1995.
Wow.
And so we actually made it all the way, and we did finally increase sales tax. We did a 1% sales tax increase back in uh, 2019, but that was for some other things, some some projects, some infrastructure, some things that
Sure.
really the city needed to do. Um, uh, and so it had nothing to do with, lack of sales tax. No, we were doing fine there. We just really just needed additional revenues to do some things we wanted to do. Um, but one of the things too with all of this, and having Avenu do, um, and they go out and they do audits on the taxpayers and all that stuff. And so one of the things we find out, it makes our jobs a little easier, a little more comfortable, in that we don't have to go and be the bad guy necessarily to the guy sitting in front of you at church that, I'm sorry, but we're coming out there, we got to audit you. And then,
Yeah.
we find out that, you owe us another $25,000, and, well, can you guys do something about that? Can you, cut it in half? I mean, it gets us out of the political side of it, just that, Avenu, does the audit, comes up with the amount, and, then it's up to the client to pay that. And they need to pay what they owe, and it gets the cities out of there. Well, the mayor's my next door neighbor, and, maybe he can do something. Well, no, I'm sorry, but, it is
Sure.
what it is. And so,
Yeah.
like I say, the biggest part, it makes it a lot better for us, and from a political standpoint.
Excellent. So I know we've covered the administration aspect. We've talked about your overall sales tax collection, the percentage of that commitment to your budget, and the overall discovery and recovery of unlicensed businesses in order to pull that community into compliance. Bob, I've learned a lot. Thank you for sharing this. I'd love to leave our listeners with some key takeaways. I'd love to hear your perspective on some suggestions you would make to other local government leaders who are considering whether, one, they're either in full compliance or not, or they may just have a need to enhance their overall tax administration process, or both. What are some of your feedback and some of the suggestions you may have to some of our listeners?
Well, I guess one of the things, whether somebody uses, Avenue, or even somebody, another private company, or if they use the state and uh, the state to collect their sales tax form. Um, I guess one of the things, from our standpoint, is really just take a look at it and see. I know some cities, collect their own sales tax, and we have some that, talk to us and say, oh yeah, it does this, and this. And then you get in there where you start talking to them, and how many people do you have do it? And then, a lot of times it takes, it takes a lot of manpower for it, depending on what you're doing. And that's in addition, uh, you're doing that, and, you're still doing, like, we handle all sorts of, basically all the revenue for the city comes in through us. So we're dealing with that. I mean, uh, my office, we deal with, with city elect. I mean, we're spread out. We do a bunch of different things. And so, when you start talking and having, I don't know if you could do it with 2 people, 3 people, 5 people. It depends on your size and number of businesses that you have, and all that stuff. Uh, I, I personally would hate to think that we would even consider, trying to collect the sales tax ourselves, but it may be good for your particular city or town that you have, or borough, or whatever uh, whatever you have there. But um, and like I say, I think, to me, one of the biggest things with us, it has been cost effective. We have gotten additional revenue, like I say, from the business license. Discover recovery is a no-brainer to me. Um, and a big thing is getting the politics out of it, and especially, like, I know, for some of these, especially smaller communities. I mean, sometimes you get, where, you know the dad is the mayor, and one or two of the sons are the council members, and the daughter might be the town clerk, and all this kind of stuff. And then, you got to go, and one of the brothers owns the only gas station in town. And, I mean, you get into all sorts of scenarios and stuff like that. But I mean, I just think, um, getting us out, away from the political part of it. We're doing our jobs. We're taking the numbers and the information that that we're getting from Avenu and going forward from there, and hopefully spending the money as wisely as possible. And like I say, um, just taking a look at the overall thing, and I think to me one of the things is timeliness of it.
Yeah.
I can't overestimate or overemphasize, I should say, the timeliness of having your money a couple days after after Avenu collects it. So it's great. It's in our bank account, and we can spend it within 2 or 3 days after it's been collected. So.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you so much for jumping on today. Really appreciate your time, first and foremost. And thank you for sharing your story with us. I know Avenu is immensely proud of our partnership with the City of Florence. And thank you so much for sharing kind words, but also your overall story with us. I think it's going to be super impactful for a lot of our listeners. For all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Local Government Insights podcast, Modernizing Government Leadership. Stay tuned for more local government news and insights to come. We look forward to having you next time. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Brandon.